Hi there, Kathy Barker from Software Solutions. I hope you're enjoying the videos so far. If you are enjoying my videos, please click the subscribe button or the like button. I appreciate the feedback. Let's continue looking at what you can do with Power Query inside of Power BI as far as transforming data in rows and columns. I want to have a look at replace values. Often the data isn't necessarily got the values that we want to report. So I'm going to click on sales 2019 to 2021. Actually 2019 to 2021. Let me rename that query. All right. And what I'd like to do here, and I just double click to do that, is I want to replace the values. For example, A Datum has since rebranded themselves and renamed their company Acme Limited. So I click on brand because that's where I want to replace the values, and I go to transform and I have the option to replace values here. Now there's actually a drop down on that button, so I can replace values or I can replace errors. That's handy to know, but I'm happy with replace values. Now what I want to replace is a full stop space datum. So you have to be spot on. There is a space between the full stop and datum, so put a full stop datum. And I want to replace that with Acme Limited. And if I go into the advanced options, you've got things like using special characters. You can also match the entire cell content. So not just contains a datum, but actually is a datum. So I could match the cell contents. And if I go OK, then that will actually update all instances of a datum to Acme Limited. So feel free to update data just using the replace values. Now I want to use the replace values also on these three columns. I can see there's a lot of cells with the word null, which means nothing. I'd rather see a 0 than null, or maybe even nothing with the null. Let's start by clicking the first column, and then I'm going to shift click the last column to select a range of columns. I'll go to replace values, and I'd like to replace the instances of null with 0, because that does affect my averages, my weighted averages, my medians, things like that. So I'm going to go OK, and that automatically replaces every instance with null with 0. And you can see the replace value steps here. If I click this option and I go into the cog, that tells me that that replaced a data with Acme Limited, and it matched the entire cell content. If I go to the cog here, that says that that replaced null with 0. So you can easily change your mind about what was found and replaced just by hitting the cog, or you can easily delete the step, of course. Now the other thing you can do is you can remove duplicates. So I'm going to actually ask us to first of all duplicate a query. So I'm going to go to this query, sales 2019 to 2021. I want to duplicate it, so I'm just going to right click and say duplicate. And I'm going to name the duplicate, if I click it and press F2, brands list. So I've made an exact duplicate of a query. Now I want to do that again. So I'm going to go back to sales 2019 to 2021. This time I'm going to go Control C, Control V. So Control C is copy and paste, and that's another way that you can duplicate a particular query. If I press F2, this one's to be called countries list. Okay, so you just name the query whatever you want it to be. Now, if I go to the brands list, what I'm after is a unique list of brands. So I'm going to click on the brand column, and I actually want to remove the duplicates. Now, this is one of the few buttons that doesn't appear in the transform or doesn't appear in the add column. So I actually have to right click and use the remove duplicates in here, and there it is there. Remove duplicates or remove errors, very handy. Remove duplicates leaves me with a list of 13, just looking at the bottom here, 13 unique brands. Now I want to delete all the columns except for this column. So I choose to go home, and I choose columns, and I choose to remove columns and remove other columns. This will remove all the columns except for brand because I have brand selected. That's a quick way of getting rid of all the columns that you don't need. I'll go to countries and I want to create a unique list of countries. And when we were profiling this data way back in the earlier videos, we discovered there were 3 countries. And that was because we went to view and we went to profile distribution, and it basically told us there were 3 distinct countries. So I'll turn off the distribution, go back to home, and what I want to do is remove duplicates and be left with a list of countries. So we go to right click the country column, remove duplicates, leaving us with 3 countries. Then we go to remove columns and remove other columns, leaving us with just country. So some handy ways that you can use the remove duplicates and remove columns exercise. Okay, now let's have a look at fill. I think this is brilliant. I want to actually bring in another Excel file that I know is going to have some issues. So from inside of Power Query, I'll go new source, I'll go Excel workbook, and the workbook I'm looking for is called Textiles December 2021, and I'll open that. Eventually the navigator will arrive, and I'll have the option to choose the one and only sheet that's in that file, and I'll choose OK. Once it's connected and loaded it, I can choose refresh to refresh it, and it's called sheet 1 and it falls into my flat files, and that is one of my flat files. I'm going to rename this sheet, just press F2, and I'd like to rename it Textiles 2021. All right, so I brought in my data, I renamed my query, I look at my columns and I think, this needs to be renamed, so I'll click on column 1, press F2. I need to call this state. So this is Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona. These are abbreviations for the state. This, column 2, if I press F2, is the channel, whether it's a retail, wholesale, trade channel. And this, column 3, if I press F2, is a category. So I'll rename it category. Okay, so these are our steps, done, completed. Now, my problem is these nulls. This WA for Washington should actually occupy all these nulls, and this OR for Oregon should actually populate to here, and this California should populate to here. The same with retail. Those 3 should be retail, and these ones should be wholesale, and these should be retail, and these 2 should be wholesale. So I need to fill down whatever the top entry is and populate the nulls with whatever the top entry is. Let's start with state, and I'm going to go to transform, and I'm basically introducing you to the button called fill. And when I hit the drop down, you have the option to fill down or fill up. In this particular case, we want to fill down because Washington and Oregon and California are at the top of each group. So we want to fill down, and I choose the down option, and boom, there we have it. Washington is now filled down and replaced all the nulls. Oregon's filled down, California's filled down, and so is Arizona. I'm going to do it for channel. Click on channel, click on fill. It'll give you the option to go down, and that will populate and fill those cells correctly. And do the same for category. Category, fill, down, and then it populates all the categories. So if you have got data that's a little bit, it's not in entire rows, it's a little bit disparate, things are scattered, you can actually fill down or fill up. All right, and I'm going to save and apply and come back for the next video where I'll show you how you can do more things with transforming columns and rows and data.